welcome to Doing Disasters Differently, the podcast with Renae Hanvin, which is all about inspiring you to start thinking and doing disasters a little bit differently too. In this episode, I'm talking with Terry Campese, the Community Recovery Officer at the Queanbeyan Regional Council, and we're talking about community connections from a local government perspective. So a little bit about Terry. Terry joined the Canberra Raiders in 2002 once he completed Year 12 at Karabar High School. His first grade debut in 2004 was versus the Penrith Panthers. He's always been really passionate about community work, and he set up the Terry Campese Foundation in 2012. The foundation has been set up for the purpose of giving back to the local community. The aim is to support as many not-for-profit organisations in Canberra, Queanbeyan and southern New South Wales as possible. Professionally, Terry is currently the Community Recovery Officer at Queanbeyan Regional Council, helping bushfire-impacted communities outside of Canberra. He's been at QPRC for about 4 years in community and education roles. Now, I always like to start with where we met. And I received a call from Terry towards the end of 2020 as he was given our details by a peer who works at Resilience New South Wales. And he wanted to see how we could help with some of his local communities that were impacted by the bushfires. So we had a quick introductory chat, and then I started receiving call after call and email after email from the many community organisations in his region asking for help. As it turned out, we ended up bringing all the different groups within the community of Braidwood together. And as part of our co-designed grant solution, we facilitated a community-led grant submission. Mel and I were lucky enough to meet Terry in person when we flew to attend the annual Braidwood Cup a few weeks ago. It hasn't run for the past 2 years because of drought and bushfires, and it was such an awesome opportunity to meet the local community in person during the COVID lockdown. And apparently, and I didn't know this being a Victorian, but Terry Campese seems to be a pretty big thing in New South Wales. So now we're back on Zoom for this chat, and I'm so excited to be talking to Terry. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So let's start with, so you're in a specific role until the end of the financial year at the local council you're working for. And can you share what your current role is and also what your previous role was, which is, I guess, what you're going to be going back to soon?
Yeah, that's right. So the contract currently ends in June, but I'll touch base on where I come from previously first, which was Program Coordinator for Community at the Queanbeyan Regional Council. In that space, we looked after all the Aboriginal services, multicultural, disability, aged care, and also family daycare sat in that space. So a very broad community space, which I thoroughly enjoyed. You know, we sat on all the domestic violence, homelessness, social wellbeing committees within the community, which you got to sit down and listen to, you know, community members and services who looked after community and just discuss the gaps and where we can support community as a whole. So, you know, thoroughly enjoy that role. You know, I come from a community background and just love trying to fill those gaps and help people that, you know, fall through the gaps or, you know, need some support in that space. And then we had a huge disaster, you know, across Australia, really, all up the East Coast. And I was asked to move over to the bushfire recovery space, which it was called at the time, when, you know, Office of Emergency Management was in charge back then to look after all the bushfire victims and the community that were affected in that disaster. So I thought it would be a great challenge for myself to learn and to be involved with all the disaster, side of things. I thought it'd be really, really good learning for my previous role of community. And essentially it sits in that space. So we didn't really work too much in the Braidwood region, which was heavily affected, and the small community towns around. So also thought that it would be great to get out and network and link with all the community champions and get to learn some of our LGA, which we didn't spend too much time in. And that's where I am now. And they changed the name. Offices of Emergency Management changed to Resilience New South Wales, which now Shane Fitzsimmons heads. And our role was moved to a Community Recovery Officer. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed my role here. It's been a real privilege to be able to work with, our community and the region. Rebuilding their houses at the start, fences, just working through all the different services that were in that space at the start was a bit of a minefield. There was, organisations and services coming from everywhere. There was so much money and funding flying around. So just trying to learn all of that at the start, it was difficult. I reckon it took a good month to get your head around everything and get to know everyone that was working in that space, just so we could help our community best we could and direct them in the right areas, I guess, so they could rebuild or they could move forward with their lives, because it was such a big event that some people lost absolutely everything. Some of the elderly seniors in the area that lost their properties. They lost everything from when they were a young kid. So some of the stories, break your heart, and you just want to be there for them and help them best you can.
I have to say, we've spoken to a lot of people in communities around your region, and I have never met someone from local government who is so well loved and admired, and just so the gratitude from them for the help and support that you've been delivering to them. And obviously it's before the bushfires as well. I've not experienced that from a local council person before. So you're obviously doing something very right, and it's very genuine and passionate. You're obviously pretty passionate about community. So why are you interested in helping that real grassroots level communities?
Great question. And yeah, thank you for those words. It's very humbling. If you could have the video on, I've actually got goosebumps from what you just said. But
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. I come from a sporting background, so I've played NRL for many years, and just been involved with school visits and hospital visits, and just seeing the change that you could make on someone that's going through the worst possible time, and just to see them put a smile on their face, or just to stop thinking about what they were going through at that time for however long you were there for, just to make that small difference. I don't know, it just resonated with me. Just wanted to do as much as possible. So as soon as there would be a request come out through the players, I'd always put my hand up first, and I'd be always there, first at a school or at a hospital, whatever it might be, and just thoroughly enjoyed that space. So when I finished football, didn't know which direction I wanted to go, and just going through the local Seek job advertisements, it'd come up, program community coordinator. So I read the job description and what involved, and went, how good is this position? How good is this role? So it was the first ever job I went for, to be honest. So I was a little bit scared, and going for a job interview, putting on a suit to go and sit down in local government, which I didn't know too much about. I was never really into the politics side. Didn't really interest me, but I just couldn't let this chance go. So applied for it. I think it was 2016, and lucky enough to win the role. And I've come from normally in local governments, a lot of grant writing, applying for funding, things like that, where I just brought a different perspective and a different view to what business as usual was like. I come and got community sponsorship, so your local businesses, and just the networks that I created and got throughout my football career. I try to lean on community to help community, which has worked, and it's just a different way of thinking. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with my work, but it's been very enjoyable, and just to bring that, I guess, that aspect of changing someone's day or their life or whatever it might be. Trying to do that in bigger groups now with some of our vulnerable and socially isolated and our different groups.
I have to say, how lucky is the Queanbeyan Palerang Local Council that you just sat down and went on Seek that day? Because I have to say, I think you're a bit like me, and we've had a few conversations about this in the past, that we just think a bit differently and we do a bit differently, and we just kind of get stuff done that needs to be done to help others. And what a fantastic, capability and skill set and mindset that the council now has from you doing that. And it's so great to hear that it comes from the passion inside, and it's not just, you needing to have a job and do a job. Like, you're obviously doing it for a full personal passion in delivery and the outcomes that you want to achieve. That's awesome. So community connections. So at Corporate to Community, we're all about people and connecting people. And I did come up to your race day and spend a day with you and some of your contacts, and I can see that you are very connected. How important are community connections, do you think, just from your own perspective, but also from a local government perspective?
Oh, it creates a culture that people want to be involved in. So, spending my time, if we come back to where I am now, out in Braidwood, so it's an hour from the office that I previously sat in. So I travel out every day, and this community out here is nothing like anything I've ever experienced. They've never had a community team within their council area previously. So recently merged council. We've merged for 5 years now. It used to be Pallarang Council out here, and they merged with Queanbeyan to make it Queanbeyan Pallarang. So they never had a community section out here. So just the way they go about their daily life, they don't rely on anyone. They just help each other. They create programs where they see gaps, and they just support each other in everything they do. And moving in this space now, it's just taught me so much, and it's just been amazing to be a part of. So when you go back to your comments earlier that the community have really loved the work that we have done from this bushfires perspective, I think they have done it all for us. They're the ones who have led the way, and we've learned. And we've just had to support, and it's definitely given me a whole new perspective of community and what it means to be a part of one. And hopefully, I can take these learnings back into my prior role when I go back in June.
Yeah, it is a great community, Braidwood, and we'll touch on a bit more of them later. So, in your opinion, what makes a community connected?
Not just the relationships, and just to know that there are people on the end of the line, or your weekly craft groups, or what else. There's so much stuff that revolves around community sporting groups. Your pony clubs. Just knowing that there's people there to help out if you are busy, taking your young ones to sport. Just having the confidence that there are people out there to support you through the tough times, or might not even be tough times, just to rely on support to help you do your daily chores. There is, it's 2021 now. Everyone is so busy. I can remember when I was a young kid, life was not so hectic. Wasn't as much on, but now with family life and with work and with just the pressures of paying mortgages and the price of food and petrol and just the living expenses these days, it's so much pressure and everyone is so busy that there is, people out there that can help you get through and the support. So, and just not relying on organisations or services to do that for you. I think it's just having that connectedness where, we can lean on other people to help in life.
Yeah, it's such a great way of saying it too. So I'm a really firm believer that, you build resilience through social capital building and through connections. And the more connected you are, then the more resilient you'll be. And I actually just yesterday filmed a podcast, which will be an earlier one, I think the one just before yours, that we'll publish with Daniel Aldrich, who I know I've mentioned to you because I mention him to everyone. He's the global expert in social capital, and he has the 3 types of ties: the bonding, the bridging, and the linking ties. And I think Braidwood is a great example of a community. And I think the work that you are doing, and I've heard that you've been doing, is a fantastic way of connecting communities through those 3 ways. So family connections, and then, in community connections that are not the normal kind of ties that you'd have, and then the linking ties to link government into communities. I mean, I might actually have to come back to you as being a little poster boy and a good practice example of social capital in Australia. So stay tuned for that one. So can I ask you, what do you think are the greatest challenges that you've experienced in trying to connect a community? So Braidwood's obviously an example of a community that is self-driving its own connections and resilience building. So what's some challenges you've had from other communities that are just really struggling to connect?
Well, there's still the struggles in Braidwood and the surrounds. What we see as community, not everyone sees it like that. Some of our regional towns, people decide to move there because they want to be isolated. They don't want that interaction, and that's their sense of how they want to pursue their life. So when it comes to trying to assist people and send them in the right direction and get them back on their feet throughout this disaster, people don't want to have those conversations. They don't want to come forward. So we're still seeing it now. What are we, 13 months down the track? People are still coming forward now that burn out or, were affected in that disaster. So just all because of that social side, they're not comfortable in conversations. They move to those communities to, be away from everyone. So that's been a difficult one, is trying to link and to touch base with everyone, because that's what we're here for. We want to help everyone we can. And the other one is the people who you think is worse off than what they are. So trying to get that communication over that, if they get what they're entitled to and what what they what's out there for them, that someone else doesn't miss out. That's the other one that's been very difficult through this time.
So we always obviously what we do is facilitate the national principles of community-led recovery, which is all fine and dandy, except there are, groups within communities who recover differently. So whilst you're trying to facilitate the holistic recovery of a community, you've also got to take into account that, as you say, some people are there for different reasons, have different experiences, want and need different things. So that balancing can be really challenging. What I'm really impressed coming through by just your words and your language too is that you're obviously really focused on inclusiveness, and I know this goes to the roots of what we spoke about earlier, and we'll come on to your foundation shortly. But what I love, and I don't hear very often, so again, I think you need to take the credit for it, is that you really go into things with that inclusive, who's not there. I'm always the one in meetings going, who's not at the table? And I think that's such a huge capability and strength for your local council to have, because it's really easy to get in that mindset of, oh yeah, here's the normal people who turn up, so we're okay because they're here and they're the loudest or they're the proudest or whatever. But to have the ability to identify and reach out and ensure that there's support in the right way for those vulnerable groups that are not at the table, I think is really credible. So full credit to you for having that approach as well, because that to me is it's a massive benefit and a massive strength. What's the role then of local government to build or strengthen community connections? And I'm going to ask it in three minds, like before, during, and after disasters.
Yeah, I think every council is different. So we have CROs, which is a community recovery officer. I think there's 37 of us across the east coast of Australia all sit with council and looked over from Resilience New South Wales. So I think each council roll this position out differently, but ours is a big part of it was just trying to touch base with every single person that was affected. So one of the things we did straight away in the piece was we got our community development officer was sat with us, and what she did was set up a community champion. We called it a renewal group of all the community champions in our region. So we sat together once a week, and the idea behind that was that that they knew of everyone, and they were the information sharing to get it out, and to forward anything new coming through. So we used to meet once a week. So all the information that we'll get in, would send it through that group, and it would get out to the community, and community were more comfortable in talking to a community champion about any issues than what they were to someone who's been seconded over from a different area, who the first time they've ever seen my face was when they were coming to a recovery meeting. So we had that set up in place, and I think that was instrumental in the way and the work that we did early on.
And, I love that. That's so good. And it's empowering internally. So again, you're not seagulling in, you're not coming in to kind of crap all over one and then fly out again. Like you're empowering it internally.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and we still meet now. So we meet monthly at the moment with that group, and we just support them in any community events that they are doing, and anything possible when it comes to road issues. It all comes through this now, because we've built those networks, and they've got trust with our group, so they come through us for any any council issues, which we hopefully can get them, into the right person in council who might be able to assist them. So it's been great to see those connections and those relationships grow from day one when we didn't know who each other were. So that was a big part of why I think we are in this position that we are in now. And the other thing we set up was a hot desk. We had a little bushfire assistance hub set up, which we put 10 desks in the space, and it was open to all the services that worked in the space, from Salvation Army, Red Cross, your DPIs, all your New South Wales Health and Catholic Cares. And this space was open 5 days where all of those services would come and work out of. So the community had one point of call to come and see some of these services face to face, because doing things over the phone doesn't suit everyone. Some people don't have internet. They'd rather come in and print the application form out and fill it out with someone. So that's what we set up early on in this as well. So community had somewhere to go and sit down with someone face to face. So I think those two things were very important for our council, and it seemed to work really well and build those relationships and trust.
And do you think they'll continue sort of as we go? Obviously, recovery is a long time, but do you think they'll continue moving forward, and the community will just kind of continue to work that way?
Well, hopefully they see council in a different light, because this area, like I said, they never had a community team. So normally it was just your roads rubbish rates. That's what council was for. But there's so much more to council. I think we're the link and the collaborators and the networkers to assist and to direct people in the right area. So we try and be on top of everything from mothers groups to craft clubs, like I said, in case there's someone new to town and they ask a question on where they can go with their 4-year-old during the week to have some interaction. So we try and be on top of all of that, because that's what we believe resilience is being there and being able to answer questions to make people feel more comfortable and connected, I guess.
Yeah, it's such a great approach. So right now then, from your role, and I know you're about to end your role in the bushfire responsibilities, but what's the biggest challenge for local government, and I guess your role in local government right now?
Like I said, ours is different to a lot of areas also. The biggest challenge, for us, I don't see too many at the moment for our area. These community champions, this renewal group, I can't thank them enough for the work, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have been able to do the good stuff that we have done. So I just hope we keep those relationships, just like what you just mentioned earlier, is where to from here. I hope we keep building on this, these relationships that we have, and the renewal group continues, and they have the trust in us, and it just keeps growing. It'd be great to get some younger people. That's one thing that is hard to connect with, is youth in any area. I think that's an issue across Australia, is how to get youth to come forward and support some of our seniors. And you look at all the different community groups out there, they are on the the older side, or they are in the later time of their life. So it'd be great to try and interact with them and get their voice across the line as well. So I just hope that we support, keep these relationships that we have, and they can keep trusting us.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like you're setting up such a great foundation. So yeah, then the next part comes obviously is continuing it and making it sustainable and more inclusive for the next generations. Now, I'm just going to divert the conversation a little bit, and let's not go into too much detail because we have spoken about this a little bit before. So my feelings on this again, and I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics. I don't believe the current structure of grants going out to communities for the bushfires mainly support community connections. So I mentioned in the intro that you've obviously were sending some different groups within mainly the Braidwood town our way, and we were helping them individually to submit for grants. And then we identified that, hang on a minute, you're all kind of wanting the same thing for the same type of outcome. So we worked with all the groups, and you were such a big part of those meetings and obviously bringing us together to bring everyone together to say, well, hang on a minute, let's apply for one grant for the whole town, and everyone can have, their part and play their role. So I don't feel like the current structure of grants where it puts councils against community groups, against a different community group together. I think to me, it actually does the opposite of building community connections and social capital. It's not it's not a local government decision per se, I guess, but you have been part of the process of having to deal with communities, sort of fighting each other for funds. I guess the question is, do you think there's a better way that the grants could be run that facilitated connected communities seeking funding as opposed to competitive groups and communities seeking funding?
100%. I think it needs an overhaul. The one that I've been involved in previously, we admin for club grants in our area. So we'd sit down with the guys, the general managers. I think it was 4 clubs in the Queanbeyan Palerang area. They would give us their figure of how much money was available. So we had a little bit of a rough idea of what was out there. Then what would happen, would send out the club grant application forms. They'd all come back to us at council. And then we sit down and prioritise for the clubs what we think as council. The benefit of that was, since we're community development and we had community development sitting in our space, we had an idea of the programs and the organisations and everyone who supported each other within that community. So if you're getting a service that you haven't seen before from Sydney applying for a grant, you knew that, so you could feed that back to the clubs if that makes sense. So so you were supporting local charities or local organisations that have been there for a long time and have done really good things, and you see the work that they do every day. So that one, and the grant process wasn't too big of a process for the community groups as well. It was it's a pretty simple application form, which definitely helps. And if you have people on the ground that do see these groups, I think it does help. But when it comes to this much funding, I'm not sure how they could do it better. I don't know if it does sit with, they do allocate so much funds to different council areas, but if you would have talked about this 2 years ago, saying that there's going to be this much money available because of huge disasters coming, I don't think no one would have believed you. I don't think anyone would have even put any thinking around this, but it definitely needs to be looked at because it can be done better, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a decade ago, I set up Australia Post grants program. So I went through all the processes and, everything from, why are there grant submissions that require people to be paid to help the communities write the grants because the submissions are so confusing. What is the process? And to me, I'm interested in, what's the percentage of grant funding for a infrastructure versus a people perspective, etc. I think there's so many consequences of how they've designed the grants programs, how they've run it, and then obviously we're waiting for the announcement, so we'll see what happens there. Now, really quickly, just before I always finish with the same last question, but really quickly to touch on you outside of your 9-to-5 job. Now, a few years ago, and I love you've touched on obviously earlier in our chat about how you spent a lot of your time as a important and very high profile rugby player doing community work. So you set up a few years ago the Terry Campese Foundation to help youth in particular. So tell me a bit about it. Why did you set it up, and what's happening with it now?
Yes, so I had a few injuries in my career, touch base that I played a bit of footy, or spoke about it earlier, but I've got, I've had, too many operations. So from the time I hit 25, I just went through quite a few. I had 3 ACL recos. I've had, hamstrings off the bone and groins and all the rest, which is, traumatizing to think about.
Not ideal.
So within that time, I believed, trying to keep yourself busy. So I was doing a lot of community work. I was lucky enough to win the Ken Stevens Award for the NRL. So that's the big community award at the end of the year from all the 16 NRL clubs. So
amazing.
I won that award, which I was, which was great because the thing that I loved about it wasn't about the recognition. I definitely do not do it for any of that. It was about winning more money that I could give back to the community. So that's what I really enjoyed about that award. But yeah, so 2012, I approached a community person who I did a little bit of work with, and heard how much great work she did. Was Pamela Slocum, her name was, if she would be interested in helping me set up my own charity, which she said yes. So it evolved over time. So we set up the charity in 2012, which we just used to do a yearly golf day and a couple of other little events here and there to raise money for one charity in particular. And then the next year I was thinking, actually, let's go further than this, because you don't really see where the money goes at all. So you donate the money to a charity, and then that's pretty much it. Then until the next year, until you donate that money again. So then the next year after that, we started raising a little bit more money, and then we'll just pick in different little charities that we believed in to give them the money. But the difference between this one was that we wanted to purchase something. So if it was, a disability service, we wanted to buy a wheelchair for a person who needed a wheelchair. Or if it was Salvation Army, we wanted to actually pay for the program that they were running with the kids. And then then it evolved again from there, and then I wanted to pick a direction, because we had so much support from our community that they were giving the foundation, a lot of money, and I wanted them to be able to know where the money was going, because it was easy to say Salvation Army, this, that, and that, but I wanted to have something specific. So we come up with a youth program a couple of years ago. We worked with the local police in the Queanbeyan area, and so we got volunteers, mentor volunteers, and did a youth program. It went for about 5 months, where we met weekly with some disengaged youth who were in the eye of the police, juvenile justice orders, and they had pretty strict guidelines throughout this mentor program. And then at the end, we took them over to Kokoda for a trek over there, and it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. Personally, myself, I learned a lot in that trek, and just to watch the young people evolve, to see where they come from, to see what they go through each and every day, the challenges that they do have. The thing I loved about it, there was no telephones, there's no computers, just to see the interaction, and these young people wanted to learn the culture. They were in there with all our porters. Everyone had a porter to carry their food and all the rest, the tents and stuff like that, and just to see the way that they interacted, they helped cook, and they just grew as young people. And I spoke to this was going back 2 years ago now, and I spoke to the youth liaison officer at the police, and just for an update on the young people, and not one of them have been in trouble since going on that trek. So we wanted to change. The idea is you got goals, and you wanted to change the direction of one person's life, but to hear that of all 5, it's pretty special. So it makes it all worthwhile. And the other thing is, we just got from Melbourne down in your neck of the woods a sleep bus. So that actually arrives this month, which we're very excited about. So this came out of some of my previous role in community, that some of the stuff that we sit on was a homelessness forum, and just the big gap is emergency accommodation, and it's very sad to hear some of the situations people get themselves in. Some of it's not their own doing, and sleeping rough, and the extreme weather here in Canberra is either 40 degrees or minus 10. So we helped purchase this bus, which arrives, and it's got 14 sleep pods in it for people who are going through a tough time, and hopefully get them a good night's sleep, because that they'll be more active the next day if they're not sleeping in the weather. So hopefully this can change some people's lives as well. And then we're about to do another youth program similar to the Kokoda one, but in Braidwood Central, which has been heavily affected from obviously the disaster, and there was drought before the fires, and then COVID. So we're going to take young people to Larapinta in June.
Oh, wow. So you really are Mr. Community. I have to say that. Like, you are just here, there, and everywhere, and community is obviously just in your DNA every day. Now, I always end with the same question. So can I ask, what would be the two things that you'd like to be done differently in the disaster space?
Definitely one. We've touched base on it. I think the grant process for sure. I believe that. And you know what? And this is probably bad to say, but there has been a lot of funding out there and a lot of support for community, which, the whole world rallied behind what had happened and donated money and the government and stuff and got behind it and try to support people. But you know what? There was some people who I believe fell through the gaps, listening to their story, and because they don't fit a criteria, there's not, that doesn't hit this dot point and that dot point. There was nothing out there for them. That was very hard to tell them, to tell these people, to communicate that to them, and just to, the disappointment on their faces, and just knowing that there was nothing that fit that criteria was very difficult. We still try and think outside the box as much as possible to assist these people. There is a couple of organisations that try to fill the gaps. There was organisations like Give It and the YWCA and some of the church groups and stuff like that came in and could do a little bit of support in that space, but there was still a lot of people who I thought they could have probably had some funding, extraordinary funding somewhere to be able to help people like this. Because, if someone lost their house and it wasn't their primary place of residence, there was no way of checking what kind of debt they were in. Who knows? They could have had huge mortgages on both houses, for example. That's just one small example that there was no way of seeing what their financial hardship was at that time.
Yeah, they're great. They're great two examples. And I think, I hope, and it sounds like it is happening, that there's a lot of learnings taken from the process, but more importantly, that those learnings will be actually integrated into, better outcomes and processes for the future. And I hope that, the local council or Resilience New South Wales are really embracing the knowledge and that you have and your experience of the role that you've played with the disaster space, because I think there's so much learning from that real grassroots level. Terry, thank you so much. So today I've been talking to Terry Campese, and he's the Community Recovery Officer at the Queanbeyan Regional Council. We've been talking about community connections from a local government perspective, as well as many other things. Terry, thanks so much for talking, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for having us, and I hope everyone enjoyed that little session.
I'm sure they will. That's the end of this episode of Doing Disasters Differently, the podcast, which I hope you found to be relevant, informative, and inspiring. If you're interested in participating in the conversation or to connect with me personally, please visit corporate2community.com. Until the next episode, stay safe, and remember, we all have a role to play in thinking differently and doing differently before, during, and after disasters.